This is The Right Approach. I'm JW Judge, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Barbara Hinsky. This is a podcast for writers to learn more about the craft and business of writing as we explore a new topic every week. Our guest today is Kristina Adams, who runs The Writer's Cookbook, co-hosts the podcast The Writer's Mindset, and she authors paranormal romance and women's fiction under the name KC Adams. She's here today to talk about the physical and emotional toll that writing takes on us writers. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
And I was looking at your newest book, The Mean Girls Murder, which I love the title. And it also takes me back to the early 2000 Mean Girls movie.
Thank you.
Which I think is super underrated movie.
I didn't want to call it that, but the actual title that I wanted to give it was not Amazon appropriate or genre appropriate. so that was kind of the closest synonym I could find that wasn't too sweary for Amazon.
Well, it looks like it's doing well. I mean, the reviews are good.
Yeah, I really didn't expect that response because I had to basically rewrite it. Not quite from the beginning, but maybe 10 to 20% stuck. And then I redid the lot after getting beta feedback. And so I really, really pushed myself, even though at this point I'd already planned initially to take a step back from publishing as quickly as I had been. Because the first 4 books are a 4-book arc. You can read them as standalones, but the big bad at the end has been, you've been following it. And so this one is kind of the aftermath of that almost, as well as a standalone story. And I'd planned originally to write something a lot cozier. And the feedback was just that it wasn't trying hard enough.
Oh, no.
You can do more. Some people were a lot more subtle with how they said it. And some of them were like, this isn't working, They're a lot more blunt. And so I'd already got pre-orders up at this point on, I think, Apple and Kobo. And I'd already put it up on Amazon, but for a later date. So I pushed the date back everywhere to the end of March. This was last summer. And I started thinking how I could improve it. And yeah, the response has been completely insane. Some of my fans who've been with me for several years now, arc reading all of my books from different genres, they've been like, this is your best book yet. And that's just, I never envisaged that because I was so in the process, if you will, that I wasn't even thinking that much about reader responses. I was just like, how can I push my characters harder? How can I do more with this? How can I make it different without breaking the law that I've already created? And that was really hard.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because our topic today about the way we push ourselves, so this would be mental and I guess physical pushing, because writing is a physical thing as well. But here you have crafted this whole book, and then the betas have you stripping out so much and reworking it. And kudos to you for listening and doing the hard work. And I love the good response. But how did you get your mind and get yourself emotionally girded to do that?
That's a really good question. And I'll be honest, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
This is the most significant rewrites I've had to do since my very first book, What Happened in New York. And I think that almost prepared me, knowing that, because I've been through this experience before. And I think if it hadn't been my first experience, it would have been a lot worse. And I just thought, you know what, I've got this deadline. I want to be true to my characters. I want my readers to love this book, which they do, obviously. And I love spending time in that world. And I understood why people gave the feedback that they did. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to the beginning and see what I can come up with. And once I got the feedback, I didn't immediately start working on it. I slowed down and took a bit of a break and let things percolate. I always say percolate because it makes me think of coffee. I don't like the word ruminate because it has negative connotations. So I percolate. And they're in the back of my mind while I was doing client work, while I was planning some other stuff that I was working on. And over time, some of the stuff I'd been learning about, I have an interest in history. So I was learning about the Victorians. And I've got some Victorian characters in the books. And I realized there was ways I could tie in the Victorian stuff that was already there with book 5's antagonist. And so I changed the antagonist, and that was why it involved such significant rewrites. I changed everything from his motivations to who he targeted, to why he was doing it, to what he looked like. There was only one element from the original that stayed, but I had to change how that affected the other characters, because even the subplots changed. I think there was one, maybe two subplots that didn't change, and I've got kind of 4 characters who all have their own things going on. So it's a lot. And this is actually the longest book in the series as well. And I think taking my time with it and not pressuring myself, being like, okay, this needs to be done. I need to find a solution, but I'm not going to beat myself up over this because this is just how it is. This is the nature of the game. I want to publish the best book possible. And so I know deep down that that book did need work. And so I think it was one of those things. I needed that feedback. I needed to hear it from someone else who cared about the series to go, all right, you know what, this isn't working. And even the really nice person he gives feedback is like clearly sugarcoating her words. Like, I've got to change. When 3 people tell you the same thing, you've got to admit that things need to change. And that meant, like I say, that some of the subplots needed to change so that I could weave things together better. And that was annoying because I was attached to those subplots. But again, it's all about creating the best reader experience possible. And, you know, the old phrase, kill your darlings.
Yeah. Wow. Good for you. It is a lot of work to do that kind of a rework, for sure.
Yeah, so I can identify, and I haven't even gone back and done the work yet. So I'm writing my 5th novel right now. And I sent the first quarter of it to my alpha reader. I think that, Barb, did I send some of the first chapters to you on that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like the feedback was generally good, but also it was, hey, there are a lot of people you're introducing here. And it's hard to keep them all straight. And also the emotional stakes are kind of flat. And so I know now, you know, I'm halfway through, that those aren't huge changes, but figuring out how to make a large host of characters memorable because they're all stuck together on this plane, and like it's going to require some doing and figuring out how to manage that. So that even while I am writing the rest of it, there's a part of my brain that is saying, hey, don't forget, like you still need to be thinking about how to change the front end of this thing. So I know that we haven't talked about it yet. I have listened to you in other interviews talk about how you have tried and ultimately rejected rapid release for yourself because it didn't work for you. Barb and I have talked about how it doesn't work for her. So can you talk to us about that experience of trying that, because there's so much emphasis on it in the indie author community of this is the way, to borrow from The Mandalorian. And it's not the way. It may be for some folks, and I think for a lot more folks, it's probably not the best way to work for them. So can you tell us about your experience and why it didn't work for you?
Yeah, so I like to wear lots of hats because I get bored easily. So I write for clients as well. I do content marketing for them. I had the Writer's Mindset podcast. I have my books. You know, I teach writing. And so that is already a lot to juggle. So I have to be really careful. And I think if someone can write full time, then yeah, maybe they can rapid release in a healthy way, but you've got to nail all the tropes and you've got to get everything right. And you've got to constantly stay on top of all these things. And if you have any semblance of a life, or you want to, or you don't want writing to dictate your life, then rapid release is a recipe for burnout. And that's what happened with me, especially with the books I write being so heavy on the emotions. You know, I wrote, I think it was my 17th or 18th book, Hollywood Heartbreak. That was so emotional. It's dealing with grief, addiction, eating disorders, you know, very, very heavy topics in a first person point of view. So that was a lot emotionally. And also to write that, I had to go back through and read my old work because there's an overlap with the Hollywood Heartbreak and my earlier books. And at the time I didn't plan, so I didn't have anything to refer back to except like one table with a few key dates in. So I needed to cross-reference how things happened in different scenes and all of those things. And it was really stressful for me to go back through and read old work because I don't like doing it. I find it easier now, but then I didn't. So I put so much pressure on myself to reread it. And then on top of that, like I say, there is the emotion ceiling with the book. And when you're writing things that are so heavy on the emotion, it's also emotionally draining, and you need that time to recover. And when I first started rapid releasing in 2019, I had a full-time job. I was kind of running from grief because I lost my nan, who was one of the women who raised me in 2019. And so I was releasing maybe every 3 months or so. And also I wanted to release the first 4 Afterlife Calls books fairly quickly because of, like I say, it was a 4-book arc. And my first series took 4 or 5 books to really take off. So I was trying to emulate that model as quickly as possible. And while I'm proud of those books and the reader response is incredible, it was very draining. On top of, I'm now self-employed, and managing a business is inherently stressful. Doing it during a pandemic is even more stressful. On top of having chronic health issues, attempting to have a life. Our dog has health issues. That doesn't help because you're constantly listening for signs that she's having a flare up. So all these things build. And I think sometimes we don't notice those little things that build and build and build because they creep on top of us. And
Yeah.
so after I published the 4th Afterlife Calls book, The Witch's Sacrifice, I had planned to slow down, and I still did because there was 9 months between Witch and Mean Girl, although that was because of the rewrites. I hadn't originally planned for that. I'd planned for it to be 4 months. But in hindsight, I think it turned out for the better because it allowed me to make it that, to get those amazing reviews from readers, and also to then pace myself. And I think that's one of the things that rapid release misses, is that ability to work to a schedule that works for you. And that's why a lot of us go indie, isn't it? So that we don't get trapped in someone else's way of doing things. We choose more control. But if you're rapid releasing, it's not under your control, it's the retailer's control and sometimes readers. But to be honest, like, I've been upfront about my health struggles with my readers, and every single one has said, I would rather you slow down and be healthy and keep publishing for a longer period of time than burn yourself out and stop. Because there have been a couple of books where I have been very, very close to stopping and just completely having had enough, because I love writing, but if you push yourself too far, it can make you hate it.
That's so funny. I find now that I'm solely working for myself as a writer, I'm the worst boss I've ever had. Oh my God. There's no vacations, time off, weekends, no. And this was encouraging. I heard this on Clubhouse this week. They were talking about rapid release is going out of fashion. Oh, thank goodness, because that's evil. My friends who are doing rapid release in the women's fiction arena will write like 5 books and get them all ready before they start putting them up on Amazon. The thought of that makes me want to break out in hives. I do not want to write a 5-book series and then hope that it finds a market. That to me is just far too much effort to put into something. I want to publish a book and see if it goes anywhere. Yeah, that's just nuts. And this is a self-inflicted wound, and we all need to stop it.
Yeah, you're right. I think a self-inflicted wound is a really good way of putting it, because when you're caught in that cycle, you don't realize you're doing it, and you don't realize how detrimental it is until you hit that limit and you start to get the brain fog, you start to feel fatigued, you start to feel physically maybe in pain, and you get all these signs that your body is telling you to slow down, but maybe you push yourself to keep going, and then you can't function at all. And I have spoken to multiple authors who have experienced that, and I've seen the same thing as you about how rapid release is going out of fashion because authors just can't keep up. It's exhausting.
So
It's like
Kristina,
you're hamster on the wheel, and somehow the wheels don't turn as well, but we're just good little hamsters. We're just going to keep pushing through until we just expire. It's ridiculous. Sorry.
Such a good analogy. Such a good analogy.
right, so you've mentioned, Kristina, how pushing yourself affects some physical ailments that you've got. Have you put measures in place to kind of keep yourself in check and help you monitor to make sure you're not getting to that point now?
So it is an ongoing journey because every book is different. And as we learn and grow as people, those warning signs, though our limits will change. You know, when there is
Mhm.
external stresses going on, that impacts our writing and how much we can do. And so it is important to factor in those and not just writing. Like if you haven't slept very well, you're going to probably have a bad writing day, right? And then long term, if you're worried about finances, that's going to affect your stress levels. And maybe then you can't write to the best of your ability, or you find editing harder. For me, I find stress tends to impact editing more than writing, but writing a book is mostly editing, let's be serious. So I am working on those measures. And also I think it's about spotting those warning signs. So for me, I get tinnitus, which is a really weird one, but that is one of my new signs actually, is the ringing in my ears when I'm trying to do something. Another one, like I say, is fatigue. I get chronic pain and my muscles get quite heavy when I need to slow down. And the other thing is brain fog. When I've got brain fog, you will not get English out of me. What I say will not make sense. And I don't generally understand what other people are saying either, even if it's someone I know very well, or I misinterpret things, or basic things don't make sense. I can't read a book. And this may sound extreme, but you know, I have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. That's some of the things that come with it. And I have noticed that when I'm stressed, I tend to eat less well. Like I will consume more sugar, for example, as that easy source of energy, but it comes with strings. Sugar is dehydrating. So actually it can mean that you're then thirstier, and also it can affect how you feel physically and mentally. And also I can't digest certain foods properly. So if I'm not taking things like a digestive enzyme or eating foods like pineapple, which contain enzymes, again, it impacts how I feel. So I think it's about learning those signs, but also putting preventative measures in place as much as possible, like the pacing, like healthy eating. I know healthy eating sounds like a bit of one of those, like, some people go on and on about a broken record, but I have noticed a significant parallel between how I eat and how I feel mentally. It's absolutely huge for me. Like, I can't digest wheat properly. That's one of the big ones for me. And I ate a lot of wheat last week, and I felt terrible at the weekend. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be why, isn't it? Like, So I'm trying to behave this week. And it's not easy because I don't eat dairy, and a lot of dairy-free protein sources are wheat-based. So it is hard to
Mm.
juggle these things, but that's something else that you have to factor in and cater to so that you can perform at your best self. And something my assistant said to me recently that's really stuck with me is that rest is work, because it
Mm.
is. And we often forget that it is work, but if you're in that cycle of go, 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 actually breaking that cycle is it really hard.
Well,
Yeah,
and I want
I
to
am.
acknowledge,
Oh, go ahead, Barb.
sorry, I want to acknowledge you're talking about food and the foods that are healthy to eat and not healthy to eat. And there's also the time factor involved in eating healthy. A lot of those foods aren't readily available. Maybe you have to order online or go to a special store. You can't just zip into like a fast food place when you're starving like crazy to pick up something. You have to go an extra effort. All of that factors into the time and the stress of it. And you know, I'm
Exactly.
under a lot of stress right now, and I've got tinnitus, and I never, it comes and goes, and I check my blood pressure, it's not that. So I bet it's stress. I never knew that. So
Yeah,
thank you.
The mind likes to, I hasten to say, play tricks on us, but that's what I'm going to say because I did a talk on ghosts last night. And so when we are in a state of fear, which is stress, which is anxiety, which is, you know, it's a situation you feel trapped from and can't get out of, like financial stress, like, you know, relationship stress, like something at work, like rapid release, our mind subconsciously creates these defense mechanisms to tell you to slam on the brakes. And that this can come from when you're challenging yourself as well, which is still a force of stress, even if you want to break out of your comfort zone. So if I'm reading a book on chronic pain, I will still get tinnitus, even though it's something I want to do because I want to learn how to improve my chronic pain. So yeah, I recently got tinnitus because I did a treatment program called Curable for my chronic pain, which basically meant that I went from practically bedbound before COVID to, you know, being able to do boxing and take the dog for a walk and stuff. But because of the strain I've put on myself lately, it has had consequences, and so I can't do as much exercise as I could do a few months ago, and I am more tired than I used to be. And again, there's the fun side effect of tinnitus, which I'm sure, as you know, Barbara, is not fun, and it's really annoying.
It is really annoying. Yeah.
Well, now all I want to do is talk about ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I don't have chronic health issues, but I have had in August of 2020, went on family vacation. We go every year with my folks and my sister and her family. We all go to the beach. And on the drive down there, I was driving in my wife's car, which I hadn't taken on a long trip before. And I was thinking, like, this is the least comfortable car I've ever ridden in, and I hate it. I hate this car so much, and my back hurts. And we get there, and I was really uncomfortable. And it turned out that I had shingles in my back. And so I go to, the doctor, and it wasn't the car. By the way, the car is great. Everything about the car is good. And he's like, "Hey, have you been under a lot of stress lately?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I have." Like, "Well, this is one of the things that can happen. And so you need to figure out a way to manage it better." And I can't say that I have learned to effectively manage it very well. But your body will tell you. And sometimes if you're not listening, it will tell you in really uncomfortable ways.
Oh yeah, there are a couple of really good books I would recommend for anyone interested in how the body tells you to slow down. One is called The Body Says No. No, let me start again. The body keeps the score. I'm confusing two titles. The Body Keeps the Score, and I've completely forgotten the author's name, but he is like the guy on this topic. He's done all the research and stuff. And the other one is called When the Body Says No, and that's the one I'm reading at the moment. And they're both really insightful, and they will make you realize how a lot of these symptoms we are experiencing, particularly ones that we kind of dismiss sometimes, like you get stomach cramps, or you have a bout of IBS, or you've got tinnitus. These are often the body telling you to slow down.
So can we pivot to ghosts for a minute?
I mean, if you want to, I'm happy to talk about ghosts.
I kind of do. So what was the subject of your talk that you gave?
Yeah, so it was myself and my co-host Ellie Betts. It was Matty Dalrymple from The Indie Author and Daniel Wilcox from Activated Authors. And we all have an interest in horror and ghost stories. So we kind of had a YouTube live chat where we just talked about our different approaches, and we got some really great viewer questions as well. Ellie and I had originally planned for it to be about 45 minutes long, and we talked for an hour and a half.
Nice.
But it was loads of fun, and like I say, we got some really great questions submitted as well.
What is it about ghosts and ghost stories that is compelling to you?
That's a really good question. I actually wasn't interested in ghost stories until a few years ago. Believe it or not, I had no interest in them, didn't watch horror movies, nothing. And then when my nan passed away in 2019, there was something, I don't know. I'd read this ghost story book the year before and not carried on with the series, but I decided to carry on with the series and completely fell in love with it. And the series is The World of the Gateway by E.E. Holmes. And it's a unique spin on ghosts and kind of like private schools where they train people to be the gateways that help ghosts cross over. And she is a prime example of pushing your characters as hard as possible and then some. And I think that appealed to my writer brain, and her style is very fast paced, which appealed to me. And there is just something about ghosts when you've experienced grief, I think, that is kind of comforting, because I don't believe in ghosts, but there's it would be nice if maybe it was a thing and I could have another conversation with Nan. I think there is a subconscious element to that. And so I carried on reading ghosts, reading that series, and started reading some others, and started watching horror movies, and just got into all the ghost things. And then this is the most cliche thing, but in June 2020, I dreamt up the climax of The Ghost Call. And I know that I hate it, like I dreamt it. It is such a writer cliche, but it was so vivid in my mind. I was like, I have to write this. I have to spend more time with these characters. And so then I thought it'd turn into like a trilogy or something. And now I've got like 14 or 15 books planned and only done 5 so far. So yeah.
Well, it may be a cliche, but it is also one that I'm perpetuating because 2 of my 5 novels have, like, the catalyst has been dreams that I had that have played significant roles in, like, the first one, my debut novel, was the chapters 2 and 3 of the book are almost exactly this super weird dream that I had, about a Pegasus that was being kidnapped. And then this novel that I'm writing right now is a murder mystery, suspense kind of novel, and it started with a really weird dream. So, like, it's a thing.
Totally.
Mhm.
Well, before we let you go, I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you, your podcast, all the things that you're doing so they can check it out.
So you can find all my books at KristinaAdamsAuthor.com, and that's Kristina with a K. All of my advice for writers, from blog posts to the podcast to courses to nonfiction books, are at writerscookbook.com. And if you want to have a chat, you can find me on Facebook at Kristina Adams Author.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think it was informative and can be really helpful to a lot of writers out there.
Thank you. I hope so.
Absolutely.